And now, rock and rollers, we have a bit of a throwback and lean forward panel with Pam and Tommy, chronicling what may be one of the pivotal events in the modern digital age. The Hulu miniseries, which debuted on the Disney-owned streamer on February 2nd, has snagged not one, not two, not three, not four, 10 Emmy nominations this year, including Outstanding Limited or Anthology Series and Top Actress and Actor nods for stars Lily James and Sebastian Stan, who portray, if you don't know, Pamela Anderson and Motley Crue stickman Tommy Lee in the Robert Siegel and D.V. Vincentes showrun offering. If you missed it in the 1990s, the marriage and subsequent drama and a certain sex tape between the Baywatch superstar and the hard rock and drama was tabloid fodder galore during the dawn of the digital era. Perhaps more profoundly for today, Pam and Tommy, which was also executive produced and starred Seth Rogen, who's also up for an Emmy too this year, depicts the weight of celebrity, misogyny, and the disappearance of privacy, to name but a few topics at play. Lily, Sebastian, Robert, and Dee are all here with us today at Contenders. In fact, Sebastian and Lily are returners to Contenders. They're alum. But before we talk Pam and Tommy, let's get to know this series a bit with a clip, and then we'll be back with our panel. Okay, guys, I have to say right off the bat, there is something so disarmingly beautiful and charming about that. And clearly, Lily, part of snagging the Emmy nom. Now, as we said, guys, we are joined today by the stars of Pam and Tommy themselves, Lily James and Sebastian Stan, as well as executive producers, co-showrunners, and creators, Robert Siegel and D.V. Vincentes. So, guys, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dominic.
Thanks for having us.
So, Lily and Sebastian, first time being nominated for an Emmy. I have to ask you guys, what is that like?
Very exciting. Very overwhelming.
Sebastian?
Yeah. I mean, it's surreal. I don't know. It certainly feels. I think gratitude is probably the best word to kind of describe it all, because I think, I know, like, we all put in so much of our hearts and work into it, and everybody did, and there was always this excitement showing up to work every day for this, and so just to have that, obviously, to have that be recognized in a way is very fulfilling.
Now, one of the things, and you guys have talked about this before, and as I mentioned in the intro, you guys have joined us before for Contenders, but I want to get a sense of the process of playing these two characters, because here you have two people who are still alive, still with us, still very much a part of the public eye. Sebastian, Lily, give us a sense of what went into the process for you as actors, not the physical transformation, obviously Sebastian with the tattoos and Lily with everything, but the kind of mental and psychological process that went into playing these two characters at this time in their life. Lily?
There was just a lot that went into all of it. I mean, there was a huge sense of wanting to do this real person justice and tell their story honestly and with great empathy and protecting them. And then you always have a feeling of like, do I have the right, and am I good enough, and all these things. And that was way more, as an actor, you have that when you're taking on any role, and that was heightened times a million with this. And so there was a lot of like internal battles going on, but all of that at the end of the day, I think was the motivation to work as hard as we possibly could and make sure every speech, every word, every part of the story we invested our full hearts into, and made sure we were all collaboratively telling the story with the same intention. And everyone, like Sebastian was saying, like everyone on the show worked so hard. And so to share this moment with these nominations for all these different departments and for the show, and it's just so overwhelming and feels like such a great honor for us to share that, because every day everyone was coming and giving everything to protect this story and tell it as best as we possibly could. But it was a huge responsibility, huge.
Sebastian, obviously you went through, like both you and Lily went through big physical transformations, but what was it, how did you become Tommy Lee?
I mean, look, I like I said, there was, between the tattoos and sort of the drums and kind of the research, which never ended, I think, for both of us. I mean, we were, up until they were yelling rolling for the next take, we would be listening to headphones and kind of, like I said, like Lily, I had to like remember that she had an accent, like it was full on up until the last second every day. And There was a lot of kind of just trust, honestly, that had to sort of just happen at some point. I think, there's a voice in your head that's bashing you and attacking you in every way possible, worse than anyone could ever be. Being like, you're gonna fail, you're not gonna do this well.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and at some point you have to just go, you know what? I feel supported here. There's a great script. They're great episodes. There's great writers involved. We've got a really great director's got to take. There's a partner who is showing up with everything, and like that's it. I've been thinking a lot about like why do certain things kind of work and why do other things don't work, and I just keep coming back around to this thing where it's like it's never an individual force that's driving something. It has to be a marriage of all these different components, right? If you have a good script in place, then you have this map, and so it allows you to go and then you kind of have a little bit of an inkling as to what to research specifically that those scenes require, right? But then without that, you don't have a gauge, and if you don't have the directing piece sort of to point you in the right direction, and then you're not staying open to a partner, like you may not get the same. And I just felt we always had that here. We always had all the components for something that could turn out well, and I feel we did our best with that.
Now, of course, Dee, this is not the first time you've jumped into the true crime genre, or let's be honest, the 1990s. You worked a lot, of course, on the O.J. Simpson series at FX, big time Emmy winner. But Pam and Tommy had a very different reaction from people, profound, like with O.J., but very, very powerful. For you, why do you think this series resonated so much with viewers, with critics, and just with the times we're living in?
I think that a primary reason is that the way the two individuals, Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee, were treated and dealt with at the time is so visibly upsetting to us now. And it was barbaric, and it's an interesting time period. And I experienced this with the OJ as well, because it's not that long ago, and yet so much has changed. So it sort of visually looks like now, but it's just culturally so different. And then something that Rob and I had a lot of fun with.
When you say that, Didi, are you talking about? I mean, to just ask you, when you talk about the cultural difference, are you talking about the absence of just the proliferation of technology?
Yeah. It's almost impossible to remember sometimes what it was like to exist without the internet. An example I always think of is like, how did you find a hotel in a city you've never been to when you're going there? I don't remember. All I know is you look it up online. So many things like that. So, but again, the 90s looks like now, but culturally it's so distinct, it's so different. And again, it's not that long ago. So you really, when you look at these things, these sort of crucibles from a time period that's sort of that distance away, you really can see how much has changed, and how far we've come. And at the same time, particularly in terms of Pamela Anderson, how far we haven't come.
Robert, let's talk about writing. I mean, it's always a challenge with any television show, obviously. You did a lot of writing on this. You penned the opener and many other episodes. You're pulling from real life events. There was the Rolling Stone article that some of this is based on, which gave us more information of the backstory of the theft of the sex tape, why it happened, et cetera, et cetera. But what for you were some of the challenges in distilling this story, which goes in so many different directions, and as DV said, jumps into so many elements of the culture? What were some of the things that really were important for you that you needed to get into this story to make it work, in your opinion?
I mean, I think just doing right by these two people and bringing their truth, honoring their truth without being without sort of sanitizing it or whitewashing it. We always very firmly felt like we were on their side, particularly Pam. In the end, she's ultimately the person with whom our sympathies lie. So I think all throughout, probably the number one thing that we always tried to safeguard was, are we doing right by her? That was, I would say, probably for me the number one thing. And then just finding that balance between kind of the dark and the light of it, because all these very dark, screwed up things are going on, but it's also really fun. So how do you make a show that's consistently fun and entertaining and outrageous without it slipping into being, flippant or disrespectful, without losing the seriousness of what's kind of underneath it?
Lily, I want to pick up on what Robert talked about, because as he rightly said, at the heart of this is the trauma that we see Pamela Anderson go through, the misogyny that she's subjected to, where Tommy kind of comes out of this looking like even more swagger than ever, which he himself exhibits at one point near the end. Pam, her career is derailed, and though she's still one of the most famous people on the planet, has never achieved some of the professional status that one would assume a person who is as talented as she is should have. Give us a sense from you, what was that like, getting into that and processing it as a person, someone else's pain, someone else's trauma in this way?
Yeah, I mean, her whole life was derailed. I mean, the violation, the trauma that she experienced is so deep and painful and unthinkable, really. And to deal with all of that in the public eye, and with the ways in which the media and as a culture we shame women and blame them, and I just felt all of it felt so it always feels real when you take on a character because you're imagining it intensely, but this felt like so personal and became really universal beyond this story that just happened to Pamela, and became about like really looking at how we treat women, and I just found it deeply upsetting, and it's particularly because it's a real person. This really happened. None of this, we can't explain it away. We have to really go there and explore it and look at it, and a lot of that was really difficult, and like DV said, looking at that we haven't really come very far, that things are getting worse and worse, it seems, with social media and how desensitized we are and how we treat people. There's a complete lack of empathy, and so it's asking big questions or provoking big conversation, and that was always the reason that I wanted to do it. Outside of this show, where there was so much we wanted to attack as actors, is like the challenge of taking on these big people and characters and transforming. The real core of it was looking at painful, difficult, uncomfortable issues.
Well, thank you so much for that, Lily. And thank you to all you guys for being with us today. Now, remember, you can watch all 8 episodes of Pam and Tommy on Hulu